Hi, I'm Ryan Hunter, and this is Kalispell Connections, a program where we talk about issues important to the community. And with me tonight is Johnny Skinner with Valley Neighbors. Hi, Johnny.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Johnny, could you tell us who is Valley Neighbors and how did you get started?
Sure. So Valley Neighbors is currently an informal organization of people in the Flathead Valley concerned about sort of immigrant issues. I think most of us that aren't currently involved in that, I think sort of the impetus for that was just sort of what we see daily going on in the news in the last few years as far as changes to immigration, refugee, and asylee policy.
And so what activities has Valley Neighbors been involved in over the past few years?
Sure. So really it's been more about education and engagement in our community. One example is the Mountain Mennonite Church here locally, usually under normal circumstances puts on an international gift festival, benefiting sort of refugees throughout the world, communities like that. So we were lucky enough to organize and collaborate with them. They were able to show some refugee films. It was really a great sort of way to engage. We specifically were able to fundraise for some wish list gifts for some refugees out of Missoula. So that was sort of one thing that we were able to do recently.
And you've also, I know, worked a little bit with the border community and very recently provided some assistance there. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So we do have some members that sort of split their time between Montana and Arizona. They are very active in sort of the migrant community efforts with that. Recently, one of the things we were able to do was organize a collection of sort of cold winter clothes for the asylees that are stuck at the border on the Mexican side. That's sort of a recent development. So you may have seen in the news, there are a lot of people, mostly from Central America, seeking asylum at the US border, currently with the Remain in Mexico policy, which I think was enacted earlier this year. You know, they're really just stuck in Mexico without having their asylum cases adjudicated. But we, working with our counterparts down there, have been able to organize sort of a clothing drive for that. So that's sort of another way that we've sort of engaged our community here and to bring awareness to those issues.
I know probably a lot of people are familiar with these terms, refugee, asylee, and immigrants. Can you maybe parse that out, though, for folks who may not be as familiar with those terms and what they mean?
Sure. So immigrant is really just a person who usually has come from a different country and has settled here. That can encompass a sort of a wide range of circumstances. Refugees, for example, are people outside of the country seeking refuge here or in another country, usually due to persecution, threats on their life, things of that nature. Asylees, it's very similar. It's people who have presented at the border or inside the country, seeking refuge, seeking legal asylum, you know, for pretty much the same sort of persecutory reasons.
So I attended one of the film events that the organization put on and thought it was a great film and learned a lot. And one of the things I learned that I thought was really interesting was, you know, it was a refugee situation, and the refugee family, or I guess it was a number of refugees, and kind of part what the film talked about is these people, they come from very difficult circumstances. You know, that's why they're refugees, and they come to the United States, and for most of them, the culture shock is just incredible. And they come and they're expected to kind of get on their feet, get work, and really provide for themselves. But the government support for that is really only 3 months, which it sounds like a long time at first, but when you think about where these people are coming from and how shockingly different the circumstances are for them here in a totally new culture, it really is a quick time frame for them to find stability and get adjusted to the community. So I understand that's kind of some of the work that they're doing down in Missoula that Valley Neighbors is supporting. Can you speak a little bit about that time frame and
Sure.
that issue?
Yeah, so I think IRC, International Rescue Committee, that actually resettles refugees in Missoula. They've been doing that for a few years now, in collaboration with sort of the nonprofit Missoula Soft Landing. It's a really good example. So the IRC really only provides support to these refugees for 3 months. And that's just sort of by government mandate. After that, they're pretty much on their own. Luckily, you know, as far as picking up the slack, it's Soft Landing Missoula. Provides a lot of support. A lot of it is a lot of cultural training for refugees coming in. They have sort of a buddy program where they have volunteers that sort of help these recently resettled refugees sort of navigate this new sort of society that they're in. It can be really mundane stuff on how to ride the bus, how to go to a doctor's appointment, learning how to drive, you know, things that we would normally just take for granted. Organizations like Soft Landing Missoula really sort of step up and fill that gap.
And what's, as a group and focused on these issues, you're doing a lot of education in the community. What's kind of the main thing that you want people to understand about the refugee community, asylees? What's that main idea or takeaway that you like people to have about the work that you're doing in these communities?
Sure. So I think it's not really surprising. I think we hear this a lot. Refugees or asylees really are no different than the rest of us. We all want a safe place to raise our family. We all want the heat on in the winter. We all want a good job. You know, they're just like the rest of us.
Yeah, and I think that's so important and so true. You know, my wife years ago worked with immigrants, doing some English tutoring and stuff, and one of the reasons I have an interest in the organization is just the opportunity to engage with these communities and learn about these families that are coming and settling in the United States. They're such wonderful people. You know, they've sometimes experienced some very difficult things, but they're so earnest in their desire to become a part of the community, and it's just it's a wonderful experience, I think, for anybody who has worked with refugees or asylum seekers or immigrant community in general. Just really the best people, and so I think it's really rewarding the work that you guys are engaged in, and encourage folks to get involved. What's kind of the future that you'd like to see for Valley Neighbors moving forward, and the kind of support you'd like to see from the community?
Sure. So really, Valley Neighbors is really sort of driven by its community members. Everybody that's involved with Valley Neighbors, they're just regular community members who have ideas that, you know, bounce them off the wall, things like that. So it's really always an open invitation. Sign up for our newsletter through our website. That'll be valleyneighborswelcome.org. Eventually, when all of this COVID mess is over, we'll have real meetings again. So we hope to see, you know, new people there. But really, the ideas of what we participate in and who we support, I mean, they come from community members. So
that's great. And yeah, one of those activities that once COVID situation gets back to normal, I'm sure folks will be looking to re-engage in the community, and this is a great way to do it. And I believe you guys have a Facebook page as well that folks can check out. So, well, thank you, Johnny, so much for informing us about the work that you guys are doing. And I think it's important, great work, great contribution to the community for folks to get involved and help people in need. And thanks for coming on the program and explaining to us.
yeah, thanks a lot.